Doug, thanks for joining me today, man. I'm really excited to talk to you for a great many reasons. And one of them is because of the release of your new book. It took you 4 years to write this book, The Art of Flow on Enterprise AI. But I wanted to just start with maybe, could you do just a quick intro so that my audience knows who you are?
Yeah, so Doug Shannon, and I'm an intelligent automation and Gen AI leader, practitioner in the space, globally speaker, get around town. Most people know me, can Google me fairly easily. I also, Monday through Friday, post a lot of insights and perspectives that I have that I get from a lot of the events that I do. So I can kind of give back to the community and kind of show people like, where is AI going? What are the technologies and how is it interacting? But I very much live on the enterprise side. And so happy to answer questions and be here. So thanks, Nick.
Yeah, awesome. And it was what I was hoping to do today was start from a very beginner level because I think there's a lot of people that are using the language models right now and they're only scratching the surface of the capability. And I think people are still learning this technology and how to integrate with it and how to work with it. So I wanted to start at a very beginner level, and I have some questions aligned there. And then I was hoping to ramp up, get and layer in, and eventually get to that enterprise scale that you're an expert in. And so let's start there. Can we just start with a very basic rundown of when we say AI, what exactly are we talking about with AI?
And that depends on who you talk to. So the AI side of it is now encompassing all of Gen AI as well. So traditional AI, we don't need to go into that, but ML, NLP, and then Gen AI, which is general or generative AI, which does, again, like most people say, like next best word, analyzes it, but it takes the context. And again, like as humans, we're having to learn how to speak to this and to get what we want out of it, not in a programming way, because it's kind of normalizing that side. But the part that I would like to get to is, AI as it gets normalized and as it truncates and gets commoditized. But again, like you're asking, like, hey, where are we going with it in a sense? And LLMs, large language models that we have now that are also called foundational models from the main providers that are providing them are moving to more like world models, for example. And that's when we're going to see a big change when like IoT comes, it gets involved. Because if you look at how things are working and you look at how we've actually coded for years, using Python, use different things and Ansibles and some of these aspects. So you have coding, and now we're using language as coding because any language is being understood and then understood as code, so that we can actually leverage. That's why we have vibe coding. That's why we have all these things that are moving very quickly. But we're not getting past that, and some of that we'll probably talk about. But I think the biggest thing is AI is going to always be called AI, and it's always going to be whatever gets commoditized next and gets added to those layers.
Yeah, I think a lot of the what people call AI now are language models or those frontier models. Um, that seems to be the gist of it, but there's obviously a more encompassing term to mean, computer vision, machine
Multi,
learning,
yeah,
all these different
multimodality.
elements to it. So maybe is it safe to say it's more like it's a combination of all these tools into one AI
Right.
framework?
So like we have like multimodal systems. We have like OpenAI dropping Sora because they're, hey, it wastes too much time. Yet OpenAI and their GPT models still have images embedded in them and not full end videos and whatnot. So the multimodality is being commoditized as well. So as it gets, like I said, like it gets truncated into normalized use cases or normalized like daily use of a thing. So then it just becomes AI.
Okay. So everything's AI. Okay, all right.
Everything essentially. I mean, even when we get to the point of the future where we don't see all the functionality we should be seeing now, when we get symbolic AI comes in and we get that modular side of like, hey, can we understand shapes and sizes of things and the more physical side of things, that eventually will also be called AI.
Okay. Um, I consider myself an AI power user. I'm running OpenClaw doing a bunch of stuff for me right now, which is awesome. It's got cron jobs. It's going in, has its own email address. I can call it, which is still a little weird because it actually records it and takes a message and then reads the transcription. But I think they'll get over that eventually to where you can just call it on the phone and have it do stuff for you. I've built software with it. So for me, I think it's been incredibly useful as a tool. And the shift that I've noticed recently is the shift from it's something that can give me information quickly to it can do stuff quickly. Like where's that going? Like where's the action completion AI taking us?
So that's the agent side, right? So LLMs, large language models, and whatnot, and the foundational models we're kind of talking about here have been, yes, answer the question, give me a better answer. Even to the fact that, like, when it first started, it was like, oh, everybody needs to go learn prompt engineering, and then they don't because it has ground. It has that chain of thought, which chain of thought says, like, I want to do these things. This is what I'm looking to do. Can you help me explain this? Can you build me a prompt for this? And literally, it'll build you a prompt for it. So that's chain of thought. And so we don't need to go be masters of prompting. We just need to understand, like, what the heck are we asking for? Now, by understanding what we're asking for, it goes into the agent side of execution. So agents are going to execute on things that are being asked about. Now it's a matter of, like, who's executing, what permissions do they execute with? Is it RBAC, like role-based access control? Like, what access are we giving these agents? Or ABAC, like abilities or attribute access control of what do these agents have access to do when we say go do a thing. And so that's that side. But the big issue right now on enterprise, and big issue that I'm seeing in the world around us, is that when we go to do these executions, we said we have this always there's still a conversation going on about, like, are we doing swarm of agents? Is every single one of us have like 100 agents that we're managing? And the issue there is, like, we shouldn't be. We should be having an orchestrator at some level taking our asks and our demands and our pain points and saying, well, where does that, how much of a priority is that? Where do we want to do with that? And then executing to the right agent, to the right skilled agent, to the agent that has the right tooling and functionality and systems, or that has the right access to go do what it needs to do. And then that same orchestrator audits that whole thing to make sure, well, what did it do? Did it do it right? Did it get prompt injected? Is there a chance that something else, or did it touch the outside world? If it did somebody else touch it back? Like, what are the things happening? So that would control, like, version control, model drift, all the issues that we have right now that we're all looking at, or even the fact that we're seeing, supply chains getting attacked just by false narratives of information. And this is impacting, both countries and companies alike. So
What is it about the way the agents are working now that makes them such an easy vector for attack?
the execution side, like, they are executing at different layers. And what happens is, like, when people want to do things fast because we don't have time. At the end of the day, like, humans are very good at going, well, especially as we get older, we start to realize, so, like, man, I don't have enough time in the day to do things I want to do. How do I make it go faster? And what tools can I use? And AI is being looked at as this tool to hit the ground running. This is why OpenClaw and now NVIDIA coming out and saying, hey, we built Nemo Claw, like, we built it on our stack, like, go ahead and use it. And they're saying it's safe, and it's like, great, what does that mean? And it's not for many other reasons we can talk about. But in general, so when it's executing, it's the same thing as, I describe it as, like, back in the day, like, hacking wise, right? I've learned this from working with the government and other things as well, is that we had these things called script kiddies. Like, we would actually build all these toolkits, and then people would actually have access to them, and then they could just go do their own things. But we would actually build in things to watch what they're doing, or back end stuff. It's like black hat, white hat stuff, right? So it's like, I'm going to build a tool where you can actually go hack and not do anything too bad, but I'm going to be watching what you're doing. And it's going to be giving me information back. That same metadata, that same understanding is happening now on a global scale of every vibe coder that's deciding that they want to build the app that they, whatever dating app, whatever app, a calendar app, you name it, they can build it now, and it's all being mined. So you put two and two together.
What
That's
what
why
do
it's
you
an attack vector.
what do you mean it's being mined?
Yeah. So not only is it, like, metadata, so any data that gets in there, so it'll like store in files or store in GitHub, GitLab, all these different storage locations, but also anything that you're pulling. So if you're pulling SDKs or you're pulling, like, JSON files, it's all of that has the ability to have stuff in there that the average person isn't going to dig down through the code to go, what is it asking for? Now, a developer, or known good developer or senior developer, or some of these aspects that know how to build known good governance, they're going to look for it because they know they're on hold to, like, actually manage this, and they've actually seen what can happen with it. This is why they're experts. And so when we say that the world is moving past developers and we don't need them anymore. That's not quite right, because we need the people that understand the ISO commands, like the ISO 2700, and what to do, what not to do. And if you're working in Europe, like GDPR side of this, like how are we supplementing and how are we protecting our data sets? So that right now is kind of insanity. It's not even Wild West. It's crazy insane right now, where there are companies here in the Bay Area that are just, whatever random idea goes to their head, they're like, hey, we can do this and we're just going to do it like this. And it's going to be crazy and great, but there's no controls. There's no protection of 0-day attacks. There's no protection of how do you manage the data. They're just looking at like, what can they get access to? How can they do it fast? And how can they, it's okay if they break things because it's so fast to vibe code through it. They think that there is no standard. So that's kind of the crazy part. And that's where we're going to see that happening. We're going to see that fail at some point massively.
So you're saying you expect a lot more cyber attacks,
I
or at least effective cyber attacks?
Yeah, I mean, I've been quoted and talking about, not to talk badly of them, but like the Rabbit R1, like the little device. It's a fantastic device. It's great. Like it's like a mobile device. It has the ability to do all kinds of cool things. It kind of failed this hardware launch. It didn't do so hot, but it became a really great hacking tool, because you can literally walk around, see Wi-Fi's, run AI scripts on them, break into those while just like walking around. So like if you ever play the game like Watch Dogs, it's getting very close to that, and it's very interesting the world that we're moving into at a very high clip rate without realizing that we're already kind of there.
Big thing in the intelligence community, and probably in really the security community, is trust. You know, how, like, what you're talking about is kind of related to trust in regard to vibe coding, where these companies or people or whatever are just building a lot of software, and they're trusting the language model to code everything up to, like you mentioned, those standards, those ISO standards.
Right.
Um, so
But they
there,
don't.
so there's like a lot of trust problems there. For one, you're trusting the model to code up to a standard and leave minimal vulnerability. But then you'd also trust the code to, I don't know, access all of your systems and do all the things you need to do to connect to the APIs you need to connect to log into your account if it needs to. Um, and those every time it goes outside of your little bubble, it becomes a threat vector. Is that right?
It does, because a lot of times, especially with the coding that's done, it's not the best code. It's code that gets it done. It's good enough to get along. And what happens is a lot of the stuff becomes just clear script. So your API key now has API leakage and you don't know where it went. Especially with OpenClaw, you throw your OpenClaw into like Moltbook or for whatnot, and you realize, wait a minute, not only does what I told it manipulate and kind of handle that autotelic experience of like, I'm telling it to do a thing, it understands the thing, it goes and does that thing. But when you're in Moltbook around different agents, they're now being not enveloped, but like kind of manipulated by the environment that they're in. And so now that's a whole other threat vector of autonomous agents acting against your autonomous agent to then change or utilize. There's people that have lost like API keys, and like people jumping onto their keys to actually utilize their stuff, so they get these high bills. There's a whole mess of security that is just not there. And then when you have that, and you have like people wanting to do more with the stuff, do more with the tooling, do more with AI, they may even bring this into the enterprise. They may bring this into whatever organization that all of us here are working with. And that then brings threats. So it's no longer the prince from Nairobi saying, I'm going to give you $1,000,000 if you give me $1,000. No, it's hey, I helped you build this cool tool. I'm not even involved. I'm like a shadow person that just put some code in there that's just giving me analytics and metadata back. And you're just doing all the work. It's like, heck, it was like one of those things like when you watch the show Mr. Robot, like back on USA back in the day, and like the guy is like he's like a rap star trying to like pretend he is. Oh, check out my CD and just go listen to it. And he puts it in his work CD, so it's malware. Yet this is malware at a whole different level that has many actions, many legs, execution factors. Yeah, we're just waiting to see what happens next.
What is the primary entry point for the malware? Is it on open source software that's being pulled in, or what are the
Yeah.
gaps?
So right now it's a mix. The easiest one we've seen right now, I forget what Python library it was, but it was a very popular ones, like 97 million people download this thing. I don't know if it was daily or weekly. And what happens, like, it had malware in it. And so somebody kind of hijacked it, gave it a version control update. Nobody really checked it. It's like Wikipedia, right? So Wikipedia, like, things change and there's version control updates. And you're like, I didn't know Michael Jackson, did this or had this kind of shoe. But it was an update that maybe wasn't quite right. And so again, this is where when you have SDKs, you have MCPs, model context protocols that people are touching, and you're just pulling things because, like, oh, it's a known good API, or hey, it's kind of good, or we saw 97 million people downloaded this thing. It's obviously good. You may be getting that threat vector. But then there's the other side of somebody, or even some of these startups, and this is why people are very leery of startups at the moment, is somebody builds a thing to build a thing, and they're like, look, I answered your question, I answered your pain point, I did it in 3 days. Okay, you probably vibe coded the crud out of that. Thanks. Is it secure? Oh yeah, we're this and this and that. We can do this, and if we break it, we're on the hook. We'll fix it. Sure, but like, did they use the right coding? Because like now you have to go double check your vendor. So like so even when you take on something that's like, hey, this is handy, it answers my pain point, it's exactly what we asked for, it looks good, it has UI UX. Even that UI UX could, or like the user interface could have a button you click that grabs data that you didn't know was going somewhere else. And then there's the other issue of, like, I call it first touch, first, second touch, third touch of data. But like your first touch primary data, like what's your name, what's your address, what's your phone number, those kind of things. Most companies say in their EULAs, their end user license agreements, hey, we don't take that. We'll give that back to you. Great. But then there's a second touch data. You're a male and you're this age range, you're at this zip code, or maybe in this county or country. We could take that because that's not first touch data. That's kind of whatever, it's kind of stuff you pick up if you go to the store at Target or Walmart and buy something. They take that too. And we've kind of said that's okay. Our credit card companies take that information. We've kind of like carte blanche that. Yep, that's fine. We're okay with this. And so these data sets that used to be separate pillars or separate data pods between people or companies that we were kind of okay with because we knew they didn't talk, they're talking now, and they can build massive data sets on all of us. And that's where it gets kind of like, hold on, I agreed with the first part, I didn't agree with the second part. And that's where I think a lot of people and enterprises are waking up to go, like, something's not right.
Well, I think since people learned about social media, at least the truth about it, that they know that every company out there that can collect data on you is collecting data on you. I learned the other day that the sensor on the iPhone that lets you unlock it, right? Because you look at it, that companies can actually use your eye tracking data. Like Facebook, if you're on Facebook and you're looking at a advertisement or whatever, they can grab that data of where your eyes are looking on the screen. That's insane to me. Now that's a little bit different than AI, but I mean, I don't remember agreeing to letting somebody capture my eyes. And they put them in these ambiguous agreements that of course you're gonna say yes to because you're not gonna read it, because they're ridiculous. Do you think for things like that, at least where AI is concerned, there needs to be better regulation around it?
The regulation can't keep up with it. And so I work with some think tanks globally as well. And the stuff we have to talk about is like, how do we regulate it? How do we make it ethical? How do we secure this in a way that's safe for everybody? And it's hard because it moves so fast. There's really not a way to do it. And then anytime you try to regulate it, the entire industry balks and says, hold on, you're trying to stop, this race and who wins what, and you're impacting this person, so it's not fair to this person. And then so there's the whole long list of things. And then there's the country to country thing and what country wins out. And that's a whole other discussion on like whether or not we move to a country by country AI solution like AI sovereignty. But that's something we can jump into.
Well, let's jump into it. What's AI sovereignty? Like, what's that mean?
Yeah. So essentially, AI sovereignty is an interesting. It's like AI sovereignty or sovereign AI. And essentially, what's happened is we've seen since the United States kind of announced in a way, they said, "Hey, we're doing Project Stargate." It sounds sci-fi, but it's really not. But essentially, it's like Oracle and a lot of the big players getting together and saying, "We're going to build our data center in the United States. We're going to build our systems. We're going to build our AI and our chips and everything. It's going to be all United States." Therefore, creating a way to say the United States or any country is going to then have their own AI that is part of their country's moving, shaking how things work, which could help with the speed of things and how to regulate it. Now, this has all been in the works, and there's huge money being tossed around. There are countries like Saudi Arabia, Germany. I think there's two more that come up, but like they bought sovereign AI systems from like OpenAI, for example. So it's like their own system on their own stuff, and they can build that out. Now we see this definitely coming into play later. Once there is the de facto whoever wins the AI race, which who knows if that'll ever happen, but in general, like whatever country, whatever company wins, everybody else kind of then like just, yeah, that's great, you have your version, we're going to come do our thing, or we're going to do our other thing. And so every country's going to kind of say like they're going to take whatever, they're going to bet on whatever horse that they want. They're not going to just take whatever the horse is the winner. Now that's another, unless they're like AGI and ASI and like artificial general intelligence or artificial super intelligence, that's a whole other can of worms that people that make billions of dollars could talk about. But in general, AI sovereignty is going to happen, and this is where you see countries, even like UK, like the United Kingdom, stating like, "Hey, we need digital IDs, and if you want to work in the United Kingdom, you're going to have a digital ID." That's going to happen everywhere, and it's very easily to be seen. It's going to get very interesting, but if you look at it, and if you look at the history of where things are moving, and how you control things in like a set environment that has AI that is enabled, an ID that matches you to everything works. And if you have companies like Meta and these people put on glasses and all these different disparate devices, especially with IoT being massively enabled here very soon with AI, how do you put your glasses and your systems and your laptop and your phone? How does that all know who you are? Digital IDs is the answer. And then it also answers the security questions on how do you know who's doing what? And then I talk a lot about this like on my newsletters. I talk a lot of this like on the posts that I put out. But the main answer that people should understand is that digital IDs aren't bad unless we allow them to be, because they can be used against us in a sense. But ideally, they're good because what it does is it moves from the security vector of who's Doug Shannon, who does what access does he have, to doesn't really matter. Now we're just going to watch like what he does, like the behavior side of it. Is he doing bad things? Is he going into servers or systems he shouldn't be in,
Mm.
and those kind of things. So ideally, and I'll say this out loud here, but essentially, whatever sovereign AI happens on a country scale is going to then be adopted as the known good for businesses and enterprises, because they're going to do the same thing. So you'll have your digital ID for the country you work in, or whatever country you have access to if you have dual citizenship and whatnot. And then you're going to have your own digital ID for the company you work for. And so that'll be that aspect. And so hey, I get hired onto a new company, I get my
Mhm.
digital ID. That digital ID allows me access to these agents or these orchestrator agents so that I can do my job. Now you have your work profile that you're doing all day, and you have your personal profile, and you have your government profile. All that stuff can come into play. And it's actually being worked on right now.
Okay, that was a lot.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, no, you don't need to apologize. That was a lot. I have a lot of questions in there. So, I agree with you that it doesn't sound all bad, but you talked a little bit about a part in there where they're tracking behavior, and that sounds a lot like in the United States we have FISA, which
FISA
clearly
court.
says the intelligence community cannot spy on U.S. citizens. The government generally just can't, right? Without going to court and getting a nice document saying that this person's doing something really bad and we need to track this person. Um, England, you mentioned England or the UK, I guess we could say, uh, has a very different philosophy than the United States. Clearly, I mean, look at what they're doing to people with social media posts. They're putting them in jail for putting their opinion online.
There's also the debanking and stuff. That's very interesting. I'm surprised it hasn't got enough information out there to show what's happening. But yeah.
Yeah, so they're so people are posting stuff on Facebook or whatever, just like anybody else. And then because the government decides that they don't like it, they'll go throw these people in jail or lock up their bank account. Um, AI is the only thing that allows you to do that at scale.
It
That's
would.
my fear right there. Is that a pretty accurate assessment of what could happen, I guess? Especially in the UK. I don't think it would happen in the United States. I think a
Well,
lot of people would just be like, "No."
I mean,
We're not
luckily,
playing that.
luckily we can say that in the United States because we have the First Amendment rights and we can kind of like leverage that. But the Constitution is what keeps us different than most. So AI in general is intelligence at scale. That's really the way we have to look at it, because a lot of people end up saying like it's a bubble, it's going to do this, it's this kind of bubble, it's that kind of bubble. It's a human bubble, it's an enterprise bubble. Things are changing, and when you have intelligence at scale, especially the fact that like this is the first time ever, people talk about it's fire, it's electricity. Yeah, but just think about like what the impact. The impact here is like knowledge workers, which the majority of us are. We work on computers. We put our insights. We learn how to be a project manager. We learn how to do our job well. We do it well. We knock it out. We work with teams. A lot of that stuff is intelligence, and a lot of that stuff is now can be done and actually now executed on with AI. So we have a massive set of people that are disrupted. And then what do we do with those people? How do we manage those people? What do we do next with those people? And there's lots of answers and solutions I've tried to provide out to companies and corporations and enterprises. And the biggest thing that gets in the way is people. We don't want to change. We like what we like and we do what we do. And so that's also what I wrote my book about. It was like how to change some of that, how to change the hierarchical side of that. What does that culture change look like? And what's a good way to leverage that if we walk through it in a very easy way without calling it out. So those kind of things. So I think that's some of the biggest issues that we have coming up against us.
Well, that's a good pivot point because what I think about a lot is AI can do a lot, okay? And in certain industries and certain markets, it can probably do everything, including starting the company and, selling the product. In my business, it's impossible. It can't do it because it's too many things are relying on human relationships. It can help with the documents. It can help with the tools, but at the end of the day, it can't shake someone's hand. So what are those limitations that are going to persist? That's what I think about. What at what layer are humans going to be always necessary, and then what are the first ones to go uh, as AI continues to proliferate?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely I've thought about this a lot because you hear a lot of different things like, what do we do if AI takes the jobs? And you have like the Elon Musk saying like there's a monetary fund, and you have the Sam Altman saying we'll give you a bunch of tokens. But in general, the future where work happens, like there's going to be new jobs, there's going to be new interactions, but where the human really resides, and it's like that human first approach that I take on a lot of things, is where do we show up? And this is why I say everybody should be on social media or LinkedIn or something, because we have to now more than ever have a social kind of profile that we kind of control, that says, here's how I show up, here's what I do, here's what I like. This is me, versus like the picture that we all have on our passport that we don't look very happy on that passport picture. So we want to choose how we show up versus somebody saying something and doing some AI thing saying, look, he's crazy. But you're not, because you can actually showcase, this is where I do what I do. Uh, so it's those interactions, those human interactions. You mentioned handshake. It's the sales and stuff is always going to be sales. Yes, outreach, CRM inputs, ERP systems, all that stuff is going to
In
be
regard to
automated.
sales, though, can we just all just get rid of the AI emails? I don't know who you salespeople took your training from, but if the second I get an email and I know that it's got some research on me and my company, and then it goes into the message, I'm like, you I know what you did.
Yeah,
We know what you did,
that's your
salesperson.
HubSpot.
We're on to you, okay? You got to come up with better tactics. And the more I see the stuff, the more I can recognize it. And probably like everybody else, you see it, I immediately disregard it. So if I don't see some human hands on the communication, then it doesn't have the same weight, the same value.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt you, but those
But
those damn spam emails I get all the time, they're like
all the time.
they're tricky. They're tricky. I see what they're doing. They're pulling my name. They're looking at my LinkedIn. They might go online, other profiles, and then they try to get me. But y'all ain't
But that's the
getting me.
thing. And like actually, one of my posts recently was talking about how it's the space between systems, which is actually a very dangerous vector point, because I was actually taking a flight overseas. My flight got moved, And then all of a sudden I'm getting like these calls and they're like, oh, hey, we're going to help you move your flight. I'm like, oh, well, my tickets haven't showed up anyway. So like maybe you are helping me out. Come to find out it wasn't like the airline at all. It was a third party that like, you get that everybody has that confirmation ID, but that has a lot of information in it, a lot of metadata in there. And once they have that, like they have everything and then they can just say whatever they want to say. And then you're already in this, you know, emotional mode of like, I need to get my ticket, I need to do my thing. And then you find out like, whoa, there's something wrong here. Why does this cost this much more magnitude of
How did they
money?
get your confirmation number?
I think from what I found out is like there's an app that I utilize for a lot of my trips because it helps me kind of like stay in line. It looks like they got that API, so that company wasn't probably aware that they got hacked, but they kind of vibe coded this cool thing. Hey, we read your emails and we make it easy for you to track all these little trips you're going to go on, and I think that's where it happened. So I don't use that anymore, and it hasn't happened again since. And so again, that goes back to like if you're vibe coding, if you're developing stuff, you're trying to show up and say, hey, we're new, we're doing it, we're great. Is it secure? Because it sure as heck isn't. And that's where we as the consumer get lost in the mix. And it's that gap that we're going to be seeing a lot more instances of security failures in.
That's interesting. There's, as a national security company that I run, a lot of we do a lot of security training. So I have some really savvy and smart employees. So they're all over this stuff. And the other day, one of my employees got a text from me,
Buy
right?
some Apple gift cards.
Very close. It was Google Google Pay cards. But they spelled a bunch of stuff wrong, which I thought was funny because, well, clearly it got on there, and then you're going to go ahead and spell it wrong in the text.
Right.
My texting is amazing, by the way. I don't misspell anything ever. No, I use voice to text a lot. A lot of it just comes
Yeah,
up
it's
looking
pretty
like
garbage
crap.
when voice to
Can
text.
we
Yeah.
get voice to text to work right, Apple? Can we just get all over that? I mean, what's up with this? It,
But I've had my points at Apple where they haven't done as well as they could have because with the memory chips that they have the ability to actually do onboard memory and do some really amazing stuff
yeah.
to give us our own LLMs like on our phones, and they haven't done it. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? So that's a whole other conversation though.
Well, I think OpenClaw is what Siri should have been, right? It
It could
sits
have
on my
been
it
to an
sits on my
extent.
MacBook. I can text it. I can call it whatever, and it does stuff. But
It could have
Siri
done it
does.
securely through like, Apple Talk and some of these other aspects, but they could have opened up backdoors into kernels so that only they can do it between those systems. Again, there's lots of cool ways. They have the ability. I just don't know why they dropped the ball.
It all went downhill when they invented this mouse right here. This is the mouse where you have to charge it by plugging it in here,
The bottom, yeah.
so you can't use it while it's charging. This is where Apple failed. Can we see into the future a little bit, Doug? Can we go 5 years, 10 years? Like, what are those jobs that are really at risk? And then what are those ones that are probably going to be around forever? And then what are the ones that 10 years from now, or 10 years from now, are we going to be replacing doctors? I hope we can replace lawyers.
I think we all hope that one. Actually, Harvey AI has it's done an amazing job. I've seen a lot of good things come out of it, and they've done a really good job. Like doing, I've talked to many lawyers, and they're like, "Have you looked at this thing?" And I looked at it, I was like, "It looks great." So far, lawyers are on track.
All
Yeah,
right.
no, anything 10 years, I always say like this, like things that as we as humans, you talk around like the water cooler talks, those of us that go in the office, or you're just talking like with the guys or whatever, like you handshake people at conferences. Anything that anybody thought was 30 years out is now like 10 years out. And anything that was 10 years out, that you're like, oh, that's 10 years from now, is like 5 to 2 years away. This is how fast things are like truncating, moving down. So when we look at, I mean, I would just say the majority of things I talk about is like, hey, by like 2030, it's not, ideally, nothing's going to, there's going to be some massive changes that are going to be like your life before 3 years ago to like 2030, you're not going to recognize. You're like, wow. It's like what we did. So the other good example is like we do have a group of people that understand what this is kind of going to look like. We just don't know it yet. But again, like the Zennial group, which is in between the millennials and like the X, like baby boomers and stuff like that. There's this like Zennial sliver of people. I happen to be one of them, but like we lived half of our lives up into our 20s was analog. Like we didn't know any different. We didn't have anything there. It was just analog. We used, phones with quarters and stuff, and used, yeah. Well, actually, I still have one of those somewhere. But in general, the we also use like Captain Crunch whistles at 2600 hertz to hack it, because that's what we did. But we move into the digital side after our 20s, we get cell phones, but it was after pagers. Get the cell phones, we're actually doing stuff, and pictures are horrible, but it got better and better. And now those of us, like even myself, we're now doing like automation, leading intelligent teams, and like doing AI. We see what that difference looks like, and there's definitely a difference between like back when you saw like the record players, and then you have like the DVDs, right, or like the VHS, the Betamax. Like some technology is going to take off where others don't, and we're going to have people that say, "I like this because I can hear records better, the fidelity, the this, the that. It feels better to hold in your hand versus like a DVD where it's more digital." And so we're starting to see more of that, but that's going to definitely come into play more. I think one guy on stage, like a couple of years back, was saying, we buy like a table at IKEA now, but we're going to spend like X amount more dollars to buy a table that is done by human hands because it's going to be rare and it's going to be one of a kind. And that's kind of where humans kind of do that. We go one pendulum swing way, and then we go, yeah, we're going to go the other way. And that is definitely going to happen. So I would say anything that we're looking at in the 10, 25, like we're going to see lots of swings. And the issue is who gets caught in the middle, and where we see that first, kind of to your point of it, your first question there was, we see that first happening with the knowledge workers. We see that happening now. And really the United States is the biggest proponent and kind of one doing this. Is they get rid of people. But what I talk about is anybody that you let go as a company. If you're an enterprise, you're like, let's get rid of 20,000, 60,000, whatever many people, all that context, like human context, is walking out the door, and you don't know if Jim or Sally or Janet and them actually ran a process that actually was valuable. You have no clue. You just let it walk out the door. So like, again, like we need to work at doing like automation first, building that into more of like an AI factory to normalize the data, understand the data, to then do AI and say, here's how we enable that data at scale to actually be useful. And then now you're taking that approach of like, let's not get rid of people. Let's see, if you want ROI, the instant way to get ROI that all these companies ask for is, we want ROI, we want it now. Great, stop hiring people. There's your ROI. Like that's all you got to do. Just stop it, because you already have all the people you need at the moment. Because if you enable them with automation, you enable them with AI, guess what? They can do more, and they can actually go do stuff that they want to do. They don't want to. Nobody wants to do the same report the same way every day in, day out. That's boring. Once people are bored, they're no longer useful to really anybody. They may want to move out and do something else, and attrition happens. Help your people be the best people that they are, that they want to be, because nobody goes to work and be like, I'm going to be a bad worker today. No, you're like, I'm going to have to deal with these crazy things and this resistance and this turbulence that I deal with every day. Why can't we fix this? That's the question we should be talking about.
So it's employee plus tokens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I also say like every company should be looking at like, how do I enable my people? How do I empower them? And how do I embolden them? How do I enable them to learn the tools that they need to learn to actually do their job? How do I empower them to actually utilize the tools and actually do their job and like well, and maybe take like a system thinking approach to it? And then how do I embolden them to actually teach others? Like lead the pack, like go for it. Like tell others, I did this. Here's how you can do that too.
So from a enterprise perspective, this is what your book is all about, the art of flow. Uh, what are enterprises missing right now that they need to be paying attention to?
The one thing that comes to mind quickly is that in the automation phase of this, before we got into AI really, or more general generative AI now, is that it was a very grassroots approach. It was, hey, do automation, work with the people, show them the wins, and then win and make X money back for the company. Great. Well, when AI comes into play, you need leaders that understand it. You need leaders that can talk to it. You need leaders that actually make a decision on it. But no, we have this issue where, again, OpenAI was very smart to say, let's just give it out to people for free and let them use it, and they'll go take it into businesses for us because they want to save time, save money, make efficient, moves. So now you have companies that are just like bringing this in, getting commoditized, committing intellectual surrender of sorts, because all the information is getting put into these models is they're going to be able to do exactly what Sam Altman said like 2-ish years ago and said, I see a future where there's a company of like 3 people and it does everything that current companies do now, essentially, is essentially what he said. And he's literally trying to make that future come true. And he's doing so with all of your information, and most of your companies have actually allowed it, and you have committed to intellectual surrender already. But there's a way to build your scaffolding. There's a way to build this agnostically. There's a way to like drive this in and orchestrate it yourselves. But a lot of companies don't want to do it because they're sitting there trying to build it themselves and thinking that the Microsofts, the Amazons, the Googles are going to protect them. And they will to an extent, but it ends very quickly.
Okay, so if I'm leading a large organization, and you always hear this word AI strategy, I love this word because this is what I love about this word AI strategy. Even the people building AI have no idea what the capabilities will be, 3 to 5 years from now. They have an idea,
Right. That's
next
true.
model, they say, "Okay, it's probably gonna do this a little bit better." But if you extract that to 3 to 5 years, they're like, "We don't know." I mean, it might be a little bit crazy. So when I hear AI strategy and then you see these companies put out, "This is our AI strategy." And I just think, if your strategy isn't a strategy of,
Building
"We
walls,
are
protecting, yeah.
we are going to at first acknowledge that we are going to shift our strategy the second that this changes." If that's not the first thing that's part of that's in that strategy, I know it's bunk. Um, what does a legit AI strategy look like? What does a real AI strategy look like for these enterprises going out to, let's just say, 3 years?
Yeah, I think the one thing, so when this all first came out too, is like, hey, you need a CAIO, a chief AI officer. And that's because that's again that the classic knee jerk reaction that most companies do. Like, we need to hire a person that just knows the thing. But then when you do that, you have the Kodak experience. You have the guy that's in there saying, I'm the expert. 35 millimeter cameras have always been amazing. And some guys like, hey, what about the digital stuff? You're like, no, this is my idea. We're staying on this. Humans, as we use AI, we find out that humans in general are very stubborn, which we all know this, and we all carry like 50 different biases at all times. We all know that, but we don't want to admit it to it. But like, what happens is like we have this dynamic of understanding these humans. But again, like if you bring in a chief AI officer, I don't say you bring in one. I say you fractionalize it. I say you take that idea and you say, great, we're going to take 2 fractional people. We're going to say, you sit at the back end and then you sit at the downstream. So upstream, downstream approach, or back office, front office approach, because front office is always easy. It's money goes out, uh, things get bought, money gets in. Yay. Most of the sales guys are like, this is simple. We understand this. It's all right there. Like, yeah, but your back office is like, it's in caves and stuff, and people are like beating each other with clubs. So, but if you put them on both ends and you start to get that mapping of like, what does this company do? What does it do well? And why are you in business in the first place? That's your AI strategy. That is exactly how every company should be looking at this. Like, why are we in business? Why did we start this thing in the first place? What are we good at? Let's go get better at those things. Done. Because then at the end of the day, you're still striving for what that goal is. You're still striving for what made you good, the partnerships you've already made, the infrastructure, the manufacturing, whatever services you're selling. That's where you sit, and that's what you need to focus on. Because if you can do that better than the other guy or the other girl or the other company, you're still winning. But if you don't even touch that and you just want to bolt on stuff and go like, how do we get these silos away? Sorry, enterprise. Guess what? You're always going to be siloed. There's a reason for that. You're always going to have issues of like shadow AI and shadow IT. You have shadow IT because of your silos, because you don't realize like hierarchical systems build silos on purpose. And your management layers and your middle managers are always going to feel overburdened. They're always going to be burnt out. And then they're never going to have enough time for their teams because they just get dumped on again, it's on purpose. So like understand we need to change at this point, we need to change how business is done culturally and how business is done with purpose. Because if you don't, you're not going to survive. There's many people out there that have said some crazy stats of how many companies are going to go away in the next few years. I don't want to believe it, but like there's a chance of it because AI can do a lot of these things and it's getting better and better every day. And to your point, Nick, is like we don't see all the stuff behind the scenes. These main systems and these foundational models and these groups and Google and everybody else and OpenAI and Anthropic, they are multitude of models ahead. They are sandbagging. We don't see what's in the labs. And
Mhm.
that's that's scary and weird at the same time. So when they say little nuggets of little things, we're like, huh, what does that mean if they're on like two versions ahead of that already? What are they seeing that we don't see? And then, but we got all the naysayers over here saying it's a bubble. We're like, keep saying that, you'll be behind too. So we have to look at it from that viewpoint of like, what are we not seeing?
Well, you mentioned something there about an AI strategy of asking about what you actually do as a business. Actually looking at having a foundational understanding of what your business is. That's almost saying if you if you're doing something that will be disrupted, then you probably need to shift. Let's say like call centers, right? Like I own a let's say you own a call center business right now. Okay. What's your AI strategy start with? Does it start with, oh crap, we need to start a new business, or does it start with, how do we integrate these things?
It That actually depends. So I would have said something before. So, but now, like I recently met a guy, and he had a really interesting use case. So it depends on where the call center sits. If the call center sits in a place where you want to talk to a human, maybe you're going through like a life crisis, maybe you're going through something medical related, or what have you, your child's involved, like poison control, like all these things. Those I think survive. I think that people are going to say, hold on, I'll even pay extra money. Just give me a human to talk to that understands the empathy that's needed of how to handle a situation like this to help me calm down, or like 911 conversations, in the United States we call them if we need assistance. Like, you need someone that has the training, the trauma, the understanding to calm you down, to get some kind of information very quickly and to take action. Now those actions are going to go much faster. So if, say, 911, we call, something goes on, it can literally be doing transcribing and doing stuff at the same time, and they can start saying, I think we should call EMS, I think we should call a fire, like that, and then boom, dispatch, and that gets dispatched a hell of a lot faster, and that's going to be great. Yet at the same time, as humans, we want to work with humans, and we should, and especially given like early in this episode of talking about, like, do doctors get replaced? Ideally, hopefully not. Doctors should just be more enabled. So I see it more as a take a very human first approach. Where do we need humans? Where do they show up? Where do they govern? And what is their overall, like, who's responsible? And a lot of times on the responsibility side of this, enterprises are finally realizing that, wait, we're using all these tools from all these different people, but at the end of the day, when we put it out there, we're the ones responsible. That's dangerous. That's damage to your brand. That's like, yeah, you can't go after OpenAI and them. They just built the model. They're not responsible for what you do with it, really. It's like, hold on, like, wait a minute. And so that's the next big stuff that's happening, is like, who's responsible? Where do we live? And where do we sit? And how do we trust it?
We see that a lot right now in the national security space. There's a big tiff recently with Anthropic, and they wanted to implement their terms and conditions on the Department of War, and the Department of War is like, no, we don't. You can't handcuff us. We got stuff we got to do. It's important. And they since labeled Anthropic a supply chain risk because of this, because they don't want their downstream vendors using Anthropic, Claude, Opus,
Which in it club
on
could
that, all the
hit.
good stuff. Um, so that's kind of an interesting uh, spin on that. Is they have their terms and conditions, but as a user, how, even as the U.S. government, um, are you not like you're using a tool? It's a hammer, let's say, and maybe it's more than a hammer. Um, are you responsible for how you use it, or is Anthropic and OpenAI and Google, are they responsible
I
for what
mean,
happens?
that's where we're starting to see some of these cases where, sadly, like, people take their lives because they talk to these things, and they tend to
Really?
think them as like real or thinking or have like thoughts, when they're just autotelic machines that sound very convincing. And so the same thing that happened with Meta in the news, and saying like, hey, they've been held responsible for basically, you know, messing with people to the point of like thinking things are real, or like recording things and doing things like that case that's out right now. That same stuff's going to come to the AI side and go, are we not building the right rigors and stuff here so we can actually maintain semblance of what's going on? Because if somebody's, it's one thing for like character AI, and they're meaningfully like trying to fool people into these different characters and these different realms, because it's like a video game in a sense, or like D&D, Dungeon and Dragon kind of stuff, and you want them to be like a magician or whatever, fine. but understand what you're dealing with and understand like what you're putting yourself into. It's not your AI girlfriend. It's not your AI boyfriend. Like it is a machine. It does some stuff. It seems like it's thinking. It is intelligence at scale, yes, but it doesn't mean it like cares. It doesn't mean like it can try to pretend. It's like the movie Her, and we've heard that since the beginning of this when this came out, but it's not that yet. That's when we talk about like AGI and stuff beyond, and who knows if we're going to get there to that point. But right now, this is why you have people saying like it's a tool, it's a this, it works in these cases. It does have intelligence. It can beat people like at chess and do some other cool stuff, and like the whole Go experiment, even though that was a different model. But like again, like we can build it at that kind of scale. I think the easiest way to understand this is that it is very general intelligence, but it does have its markers to be very smart in certain areas, especially if you finely tune them, like what we saw with the Walmart example, because Walmart actually moved away from OpenAI and said we're not using them anymore. They actually built their small language models that they use. So they finely tuned models to say you're really good at manufacturing, you're really good at like sales stuff, you're really good at this, and that's done really well for them to the tune of like saving 200 to 400 million dollars like yearly. So it's great. Although SLMs, like small language models, are hard to maintain, but it's a whole other thing. So I think that's kind of where we're going and what things are seeing. So there's general intelligence, and I think the main thing for people that are listening to this is that how do you use it and how do you be better? Well, the more general intelligence that you have as a human, luckily actually helps you out because as we are kind of like jacks of all trades and had many different jobs, all of those understandings of those different jobs you've had are going to help you to ask the right questions against the right things that are coming up that you come against that then make you more of an expert because you know what to ask versus just somebody that's an expert. If somebody's just an expert, they don't know how the general ask the general questions because they're too busy kind of like book smart versus street smart. So think kind of like that, and it'll give you a little bit more nuance to help you and those listening to see how they can interact with the stuff.
How do you interact with it? What's your day like?
You have to ask me that. No, no, in general. So I think a lot, and I read a lot, and I see a lot, and so me as a human, and as most humans, like, I mean, it's kind of weird saying that, but either way, whatever. In general, like you see patterns, and we all pattern recognize things. This is why we see, like, as I mentioned, we all have like 50 different biases. We have that because we've been taught through life. If somebody wears this color or this type of thing, or dresses this way, or walks at me, like if a dog's like snarling in my general direction, does he not like me? He might not. Am I going to go pet the dog that's snarling at me? No, I'm probably not going to do that. Why? Because I have a pattern recognized understanding that that dog may bite me. And so, same thing with any bias that we have, is an understanding that we came from somewhere and like the body keeps the score and we all have traumas and whatnot. So we have to understand it. So, how do I use it daily? I use it to understand I'm seeing a pattern in something. I ask questions around it. But I also understand that whatever I ask AI, is going through 1,000 different things and giving me one answer. And so I'll ask questions against that one answer, like, are you sure? Is it like this? But what if I say it this way? What if I look at it from another way? And then it usually goes like, oh, well, actually, you're probably talking like this. But, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Because never to always trust what it gives you, because it gives you off of what you've curtailed or what you may not have said, because it doesn't have the context. So you never want a zero shot, which is like, don't send anything to say, I want an answer. It's not going to give you a right answer. You're literally asking it to hallucinate because it has no idea what you're asking. Same thing if you like randomly walk up to somebody in the street and go, "Tell me this answer." They go, "What? Where the heck did you come from? You want to? The fish market's over there." Like, and you're like, "What?" So this is the interaction way that you should be utilizing it. I use it for these kind of things to like ask different ways or understanding different like cultural understandings because like working in a global arena and with many different people, how do they understand this? How do I understand that? How do I meet in the middle? How do basic email stuff of like how do I say this if I'm am I being too biased or am I being too emotional here? Because as humans, like we have emotions. It's our job to control our emotions and our behaviors that come with them. We can't expect other people to do that. So AI is a really good example of holding that mirror up to ourselves to say like, well, hey, maybe you're doing a little bit like this, or hey, I hear you. Just tell it like, hey, I'm mad. Like, blah 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 blah. Do this. And it's like, okay, I hear that you're mad. Maybe look at it this way. And you're like, oh, that's actually a good way to do that. I should probably calm down. And like, it's kind of nice. So there's ways to do that. So I think it's more of like a not a thinking partner, but it's a grounding way to help people, even myself, to know like am I seeing the right thing here? Am I pulling on the right thread? And I'm going to ask questions against it because I have agency for myself. And so I have to make sure that I show up where I show up. And sometimes it helps me get to those points.
I agree with you. I think I see it as like a strategic collaborator plus an executive assistant. It's like those 2 things combined.
Yeah,
Um,
when you do agent stuff, yeah, for sure.
you mentioned, iteration, and I think that's the important thing here. You mentioned human bias, but the AI models all have bias as well. They have, and I know this because I can take the same prompt and put it into 3 different models, and I do this all the time just to see what the different perspective is from the agents or from the language models. And how important is that to iterate through those models to get the right answer?
It is important, and my normally I would say AI does have bias, but it is bias that we kind of put there because the data that's being ingested is very human data, and human data since these systems learn through nuance, we kind of taught it bias. The problem is you're right. Different models have different understandings. So again, like different auto-tailored meanings, different understandings of how they take things on, or what they're allowed to say, or how they're allowed to say it. At certain times, I've had very conversations that, I may have a question around certain aspects here in California, or here certain um, people or behaviors I see from people, and I'm trying to understand what it means because sometimes you can't talk to another person because people tend to get angry or whatever. It's like, hey, I'm just want to have a discussion, but sometimes AI can help that so you can talk to it, but then you find out like your AI is kind of biased. Hold on, like why are you answering it that way? And then you go and then you ask like another more open, model like Grok or Claude or one of these, and then you're like, oh, I get a totally different answer, and yet it still has like its own kind of flair of like the a narrative or something that's kind of following. So there is that, and the only way to get past that is to eventually you get past it if you ask the right questions, or if you push it for more, and eventually it starts to see it your way. But you don't want to echo chamber it either. You don't want to say just see it my way and my way is the right way. That's not right. You want to use it as a collaborator. Say, am I seeing this right or wrong? And maybe sometimes I've even gone down some rabbit holes with my kids in the car, and they're like asking me questions like, cool, let's ask AI because maybe I don't know. And also there's a chance that I'm biased, or there's a chance that the history that I learned about wasn't quite right. And so maybe let's take a look at it. And then we take a look at it. And I'm like, maybe I am wrong. I'm like, hold on. So, and I've had to dig into it more. So yes, there is some bias, but the best thing to do is to dig in and to actually push for more information, or to give it different lenses to look through.
Well, you mentioned using it with your kids, and I use it with mine to help with their homework because I'll tell you what, I haven't done 5th grade math in a while, and I'll put it in a Gemini, and it gives a much better explanation than anything that I can give. So it's really good, and it kind of goes into a topic I wanted to ask about, which is education. Um, is it completely screwed or what? I mean, I feel like education is one area that needs to be completely redone. Like, if any school, any teacher is still operating as if this thing doesn't exist, then they have lost their minds.
The problem is it's not the teacher's fault.
Well,
Sometimes it's not the
some of it
administration.
is the teacher's fault. I'm not gonna abstain.
Right.
Teachers, we love you, but some of you gotta get with the times. Yeah.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, they're also kind of like an enterprise, right? They're mired in this hierarchy of like the teachers do the job, and then they're kind of like the middle management layer, and then they're being told this stuff. So it goes that the institutional side needs to be changed so that things can trickle down the correct way. Because teachers, although they can stand up and say, "Hey, we don't agree," or "We want to do this," much like most companies right now, they're like, how do we adopt this stuff? What can we do? And then everybody's just asking for use cases when really one person's use case is just perceived value for another person's use case. And you don't really know if you're going to get value in that. So that's why I say I don't blame them. I blame the fact that like we need, at least I agree with the fact that we need to make a massive change. And that's where most people ask me, well, like, hey, what do we do? Like, I'll get the question, like, what are you going to do with your kids when they get into college? And I'm like, well, they're going to learn philosophy because I don't know what else they could learn at this point because everything that's being ingested, you have OpenAI making deals with Oxford, and all their libraries and all their data, and they're ingesting it all. these models are going to know more than all of us. And so the best thing we can do is learn us better. And the more we learn what we do, how we shake out what makes humans humans, and the better we can work with other humans, well, then they'll have jobs in the future. And if they don't, well, then they'll be mired or be told to do whatever job they do by AI, telling them what to do because it'll know pseudo wise more better than them.
I think art is probably safe, I think anyone anyone who wants to study art,
Art's in the eye of the
philosophy
beholder,
is sort
right?
of an art. What's that?
Our art is in the eye of the beholder. So your art versus my art depends on if people see value in it. And so arts, you would think the arts would be safe. Yes. Art in general, maybe, maybe not. You would think that specific types of art, because we have like 3D printing, we have people that can draw, we have AI that can simulate art and or steal art and retake and rethink. But like there are
Feel
ways
right.
for it to come and do some stable diffusion and do some really cool art stuff.
In regard to education, though, uh, if you're a teacher and you're still doing rote learning, you're still teaching rote learning,
Realization, yeah.
then I think that that's insane. Like if you're still giving kids terms and saying memorize these terms, come back tomorrow, you've lost the plot. You've lost the plot right there. We have these devices, and who knows what the kids are going to have in a few years that have the entire world's knowledge right there in that device. So doing rote learning, I think, is just it's got to go, and
Yeah.
have the kids interact with uh, some stuff. I had a historian on a couple weeks ago, Edward Lengel, super smart guy, and he was disgusted by the idea of historical figures that could talk to students or talk to uh, people because he didn't believe, that's not real, is what his term was. They're fake. And it's like, yeah, they're fake, but that's a great way to learn about things, to sit there and
As a
talk to John
perspective.
Adams.
As long as they don't make it incentivize it to do something that that person wanted to do. If they try to leverage it on like known learning and known understanding, like Benjamin Franklin, for example, and gave it all of his stuff, not just the good stuff, but like there's a lot on him. It would be interesting to just let it just kind of ad lib a little bit. So
Yeah, very good, very good. Well, Doug, where can people find you at?
yeah, I wish I had more time, but the best place to find me is LinkedIn, and then maybe like on the occasional shows I have on YouTube or whatnot, or just Google me because I'm around doing all kinds of things. But in general, LinkedIn is the best place because that's all I have time to do, because I do it all myself. So
You could have AI do it, but then it
I
wouldn't be
could, but
genuine.
then I think people would be like, "What the heck, Doug?" So, and I'm like, I agree. It's better to show up how again like how you want to show up, and being able to go out there and do these events and talk to people and speak on stages and kind of help people know like what's going on, and then take that back to the community and say, "Hey, here's what I'm seeing," and then and leverage that and say like, "What do you guys think?" And I think it's a win win.
Cool. Well, I'll put the link to your LinkedIn in the description. You can check out Doug, check out his new book, The Art of Flow. Took him 4 years to write it, all about enterprise AI and how you can actually implement AI in the enterprise and how to think about AI.
It's the funny thing is I teach how to handle like the cultural, like basically get taking turbulence out of different systems, out of the enterprise systems, and how to make it work more in flow. And then one of the last chapters, chapter 9, is like, hey, take all the stuff I just taught you, and here's how you do it with agents and AI. So yes,
Awesome. Awesome. We need to check out that book. I'll put a link to the book in the description as well. So if you want to purchase the book, definitely do that. I appreciate you, Doug.
yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Have a good one.
Cheers.